Hello, I'm Anna Harrington. I'm a professor in the Humanities and Fine Arts Department. I'm getting feedback reverb on that. Is that going to happen? Okay. Hello, everyone out there in video land. Today I'm going to tell you about, they're calling it a flipped course, but it's more like a workshop sort of course that I've implemented in my Comp 1010 class, and then did it as a pilot in 1010, and now I'm teaching it in 1020. What happened was I'd gone to the care center for a question about my portfolio, of course, because I never remember how to do the portfolio from year to year. And I was just talking to Alice and Andy, and I was telling them about what I was doing for my class and how it was working really well. And he was really interested in it and said, hey, would you like to come and present on it? And I said, sure. So I'm going to just tell you what I'm doing in my class, and maybe we can talk about how to implement it in other subject areas as well. So I'm calling this presentation CAPSI and Composition. CAPSI, I have a handout that talks about the theoretical background of what CAPSI is. And it stands for Computer-Assisted Personalized System of Instruction. What happened was there was a guy in the 1970s who was a teacher, and he had a bunch of students scattered all over the world. And these were the days before computers and online anything. And if you wanted to send something to Peru, it was 20 bucks a minute to talk on the phone. So you would mail things. Okay, so if you can imagine having to go back and forth an entire correspondence course, we don't even think about doing those anymore these days, but before the 1980s, everything had to be done through the mail if you had a distance learning class. And it wasn't working because you can't lecture from 2,000 miles away. So he invented what he called PSI, which is just Personalized System of Instruction, a class that was non-lecture, that was broken into multiple units that the students could handle, almost like scaffolding it. We use that term these days. And the students would learn at their own pace. They could repeat the assignments as many times as they wanted until the deadline or until they had mastered it. They could go quickly through those units that they already had knowledge of and spend more time on the units that they didn't know that much about. And what happened was he discovered this system, and it worked. It was amazing how much better it was than the traditional old lecture hall classes that we had before he came up with this system. And what happened was that in the 1970s, everybody latched onto this and they started developing it, and they found out it was way too labor intensive, because how do you give multiple tests over and over again if you're not using software to create and grade the test? If you have people doing it, it was just too labor intensive. So it fell out of favor in the 1980s. By the end of the 1980s, we have personal computers, right? We've got the internet. We've got different ways of using technology to overcome the limitations of Fred Keller's original PSI system. So in 1987, there was two researchers who said, hey, if we take this system and we put it on computers, it works. And so they coined the phrase CAPSI, Computer-Assisted Personalized System of Instruction. And it just took off from then. And a lot of times we use it and we don't even realize that it's a CAPSI course anymore. The Open University of Canada, all of their online courses, except for writing, is based on CAPSI. Carnegie Mellon, when they first started doing their online courses in the 1990s, based it on CAPSI. The TBR system in the I guess it was the late 2000s, early 2010s, when they decided we were going to redesign all the developmental ed programs, and we were going to go with what they called the Emporium model. That's CAPSI, okay? So a lot of what we use today for our online courses can be put into a CAPSI format. What I did is I used it in a ground class. And what happened with my Comp 1010 classes in the fall was extraordinary. And I'm going to show you the results as soon as I explain to you what I did. My retention rate went from 60% to 85%. My success rates went from about 60%, a little bit lower because we're usually at about a 50% pass rate in Comp 1, to 75%. And the students really enjoyed it. And now that I've done this, I never want to go back to a regular lecture class in a composition course again, as long as we are still doing 7-week hybrid. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about all the benefits in a second and what happened with it. But just to give you some background. So what happened? Why did I do this? Because my 7-week hybrid class was not working. In my division, we didn't do strict 7-week classes. We made them 7-week hybrid, which meant I had half the time with my students. And I'm in a skills building class. If they missed a lecture early in the semester because, God forbid, a grandparent died or they were sick and it was at the tail end of COVID and car troubles and all the issues that our students have as community college students, then they would never get that lecture again. And even if the ones were there and it didn't quite sink in, there was no way for them to go back and review the lecture again. And in any given class, as we all know, there are what, 4 or 5 students that are absent on any given day, and that's in my class of 20 students. I am not going to repeat that lecture or that course material 4 or 5 times because those students missed it. But if I don't, in a regular class, they never get it. So it was not working. And my students who were marginalized, like the students who had disability accommodations, when we went to 7-week hybrid, I did not have a single student with a disability accommodation who was able to successfully complete the class. Most of the accommodations we get are for students, they get time and a half, or they get an extra 2 or 3 days to do the assignments. Well, how do you do that in a 7-week class? I can't give them time and a half. We're into the next essay. We're into the next semester. How do you do that? But with this, the way I've changed it, you can. So I had half as much time. Lectures couldn't be repeated. I didn't have any time to work on the assignments in class because I had time to either lecture or I gave them class time to work. I didn't have time for both. I mean, I get to see them 14 times. That's it. So I only get to see them for about 20 hours all semester. And I have to teach them everything they're supposed to know about academic writing in 20 class sessions. And that's if they're all present and if I'm present. So it was just not working. Students weren't doing the work outside of class. We know that. That's a perennial problem. They were children of the pandemic, which means they don't know the soft student skills, like that deadlines are important. They don't know to show up with pen and paper to take notes. Okay. They don't know that they need to show up when class starts, not 20 minutes after it starts. So they were missing all of this context of what we had always based our traditional lecture courses on. So what I did, because it wasn't working, I flipped it. And what I'm showing you here is the note that I created and put into my eLearn shells for these classes. And I showed them this note on the first day of class to tell them what is going on with this class. So it's flipped, but it's a flipped workshop class. Because in a lot of flipped classes, you don't lecture, they go home and read the materials, they come to class, they do group work, they do discussions, all of that. In mine, we don't do any of that. What we do is we work on the course materials and they work on them in front of me. Okay, so I explain it to them so they see what it is and the benefits for them. And at first they can never believe it, but then when they get into the groove, it makes sense and they do really well on it. So specifically what I did, I looked at my course content and I broke it into a series of units. So I looked at the assignments. We have 3 main essays that they have to complete. So I have 3 main units, 1 for each essay. And then I also have a unit that's called Writing Basics, which is all of those things that they should have learned in high school, but they didn't. Things like double space your papers, things like put your name on your paper, right? The basic MLA format, and then other things like what a thesis statement is, how to do a body paragraph, how to do a conclusion. And for some of them, if they had a really good high school writing background, for them, it's just review. And I tell them it's just going to be review to refresh things, but I bet you learned something that you didn't learn. And I'm going to tell you the logic behind it. So I've broken it up into those 3 essays, the writing basics, and then the 5th unit is just I call it getting started in this class. It's just a place, it's a dumping ground where I put the syllabus, my schedule, how to reach me on Zoom, what plagiarism is and how not to do it. Those basic, the syllabus, those basic documents that they're going to use all semester to refer back to. And I don't go over those in class, but I tell them where they are, and I tell them it's their responsibility to read through them. I also have all the assignments for the entire semester up on eLearn. And I have all the deadlines already done in advance on a file that they can refer to. And I put the onus on them for being responsible for the day-to-day homework. And I tell them, I'm not going to tell you what's due in terms of homework. I'm going to tell you when the 3 main essays are due. But when you have a quiz over something, you've got to stay up with those deadlines yourself. And that puts the responsibility for learning on them. I'll talk more about the quizzes in a moment because I had to shift my mind around what a quiz should be in order to get it to adapt to this class. And so that they're not getting punished if they do forget and, oops, I forgot it was due last night, because we can't go back. We don't have time. We got to keep going. So I broke it into main units, and then I broke each of the main units into subunits, right, or modules. So 4 to 6 tasks, depending, under each one, okay? And they build on each other, okay? So they have to do them in order. They have to work through each of the tasks, and that will prepare them to do the final essay, the main essays for each of those 3 units. I recorded all the lectures. I spent a lot of time last summer talking to myself in my kitchen, going through all the lectures and going over all the material so I could put all of them up online. They've got transcriptions of all the lectures. Oh, thank you. Transcriptions of all the lectures. And then I also created all the quizzes to go in it. So every time there's something for them to learn, they've gotten a quiz that accompanies it. They also have just a handout of the most important points for that topic and a bulleted list that they can refer back to. So they've got the lecture, they've got the transcription of the lecture, they've got the bulleted list, they've got sample student papers. Everything I ask them to do to turn in, they have an example of it, and it's an A example, so they can see what they're aiming for. Quizzes became learning tools. Okay, so not markers of how much they know, but a way to reinforce what they should have heard in the lecture and read in that bulleted list. The quizzes are additional learning tools, which means they're untimed. They are open handout, open note, open instructor if they get stuck. And they can take them as many times as they want until the final deadline to get the highest score that they want. And I will tell them that if you take a quiz and you've taken it 4 or 5 times and you can't get above a certain grade, like you just can't get above a 70, we'll take it together in class. And we go over each individual question slowly, and we talk about all the different answers. And it's like getting a little mini lecture on that topic in class. So the quiz is learning tools. It just reinforces what they should have learned. The only time I have quizzes that are not learning tools, they have 2 videos they have to watch. And the only way I can guarantee that they actually watch the video is by making them take a quiz over it. And again, they have access to all the questions in advance. So they got the worksheet with the questions, so they just fill out the blanks as they listen to it. And then the quiz is the worksheet, and they just put it in. It's the only way I can make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And all the assignments are open on the first day. Okay, they're not allowed to jump around. They're not allowed to jump out of order. They have to do them in order. But all of them are open on the first day. Why? So they can do the work at their own pace. If they know they've got some kind of important presentation coming up in another class, they can get my work done early. I always dangle it like a carrot for them to say, by the way, if you work really hard, you can get out of this class early and stop coming if you get everything done. They usually don't. They're usually done about a week early. But then what I let them do is, because everything's open, they get to go back and redo previous assignments for a higher grade. So I will let them go back and redo essays 1, 2, and 3 if I've already graded it, for a chance to raise their grade if they want to. But I couldn't do that if I didn't have it individualized, if I didn't have the sub-assignments under each unit, and if I didn't have it open for them to move forward in their own pace, they have to hit deadlines. So I've got like the sweep car coming up behind, right? They have to keep up with the sweep car, but they can work ahead if they want to. And in my 1020 class right now, I'm using the same system in my 1020 class. We just had midterm last week. I got some who are now working on SA3. They're going to be done by next week, right? Or I should say the end of this week. They're going to be done by Sunday. So they've embraced this idea of getting the heck out of my class early, and I don't blame them. I would too if I could. So that's what I did. Which means, okay, it's a workshop class. It's a study hall for my class. And I have to tell them when you come in, and the only day I lecture is the first day, when I tell them how the class works and I show them where things are on eLearn. And then I turn them loose and I say, okay, go into that first module and start doing the exercises, start listening to the lecture, start reading through everything, start taking the quizzes. And then when they come in to the class the next day, I spend about 5 or 10 minutes at the start of each class, reminding them of what's coming up, the major essay deadline, where they should be at, and anything I need to warn them about, because I can't lecture because they're all working on something different. Okay. And they come in now and they go straight to the computer and they sit down and they pull up my class and they start working on my class, because they know that if they get the work done in my class, then they don't have to do it outside of class. Right? So there's that motivation factor as well. I circle through the room. I don't just sit up here. I circle through the room and I make certain I talk to every student that is present that day. Even if I just ask them, you having a good day? How you doing? Everything going okay? How's your math class? I want to have that interaction with them, right? Some students are needier than others, so I make certain that I wean them off me a little bit so I can spend more time with the other students, but I make sure I include and talk to everybody, okay? And students can work ahead. They're motivated to get out of the class and to finish. They're motivated to get feedback before the final grade. So I tell them, if you submit it into the Dropbox, as long as it's before the deadline and I give you feedback, like I grade it and I can say, here are the things that need improvement. This would be a 70, it would be a C. If it's the Wednesday of the week when it's due on Sunday, they can do it again and use my feedback to improve their grade and hit that deadline on Sunday. But once the box closes on Sunday, they're done. They don't get to do it again until after they've finished everything for the course. Then they can circle back and work on essays that weren't as high as what they wanted. Okay. Right? It's the motivation. Do many of them do that? No. In a class of 20, I probably have 3 or 4 that actually do that. But that's okay. It's that carrot. We're dangling it out there, the possibility for them to stay motivated. So what does it look like? Let me try to go to my eLearn class, see if I can bring that up, show you what it looks like. You see my eLearn class?
Let me
Make it a little bigger.
Let me just use a couple of adjustments.
That's okay. Do whatever you need to. Do I need to share that document?
Yeah,
I do. It's okay. I'm good with eLearn. That's the only technology I'm really good with. And to do this class, all you need is to be good with eLearn. That's it. And you don't even need to be good with eLearn. You just need to know what questions to ask. And Tim Deals is wonderful. You just need to go in and ask him and Ray and say, how do I do this? And they'll help you, right? Because they're wonderful. Okay, so this is my class. And on the first day, again, that disclaimer of how it works and then all my contact information. If I go up to the content page, you'll see on here, these are the 5 main units that I have on this side, okay? So getting started in this class, this is where you're going to find all of those course materials like the syllabi and the due dates, the writing basics. This is their review. So we go over this on the first day and I leave that to them. And I say, you're responsible for reading and following these files. And you can see on there, that's just the typical getting started in this class page that we've all put on our files before, okay? And then writing basics, you'll see under writing basics, it's broken down into 6 subunits, and each one goes over a specific writing skill that they need to have for proper academic writing. That's what I do in my classes. I teach them academic writing because my goal is not to get them an A in my class. My goal is to get them an A on their writing project in soc, psych, art, wherever they leave my class and they go any other academic class they have until they graduate, they can take those skills that I've taught them and transfer them into those other classes, hopefully. So college essay format, Times New Roman 12-point double space. Some of them have never been taught that. They have to do it. And if you look at that subunit, what they have my video lecture, and I'm not going to bore you by playing it. You already have this boring lecture. You don't need another one on format. And then I've transcribed it so they can go back and search the transcript without having to listen to the entire lecture again. What was it that you said about spacing? They can open it, do a Control F, find, and go right to spacing and find that one. I have a bulleted PDF that has all the most important parts of it on there. They can have this open and they have the sample page of what it should look like. They can have these open when they take the quiz. And when they're satisfied with that grade on that quiz, they move on to the next one. And I always tell them, if you get an 80 or above, that's good. That's a B, that's good. All right, if you've got more time and you've done all the others before the deadlines, then you can circle back and take it a couple more times until the deadline. But an 80 is good. And then they move to the next one, which is parts of an academic essay. And this one's interesting. Andy loves to point this one out. This is the longest lecture they have on here. And it's the equivalent to about an hour and 15 minutes, like a regular lecture class. And it's this one, which is parts of an essay, because I talk about all the parts of an essay in that one lecture. But then what I do, I break it up into other parts. So one of the parts is the introduction. So they have a shorter video on introductions and they work through all the things again, the examples, the bulleted list all the way down to the quiz, and they take those again. And then there's another one, body paragraphs, right? They do that one next, and then conclusions, and then briefly, how to do some basic MLA, okay? So those are the writing basics. They should have that. They should have learned that in high school. Some of them do. A lot of them don't. So it's a review for some of them. It's a learning opportunity for the others. But I know that if they've gotten through this unit and they've gotten a 70 or above, they're writing at a college C level and they're prepared to start into the essay. And I do that exact same format all the way through. We go back up to the content page. Under essay 1, it's also broken into modules, and each one has multiple assignments followed by a quiz. They have 3 Dropbox assignments. They have to give me just their thesis statement, which is weird for them because they're submitting just one sentence. But I need to know what they're writing about to stop them before they start into the essay and make a terrible mistake. So they all have to submit their thesis statements for me, and it has to be in proper college essay format, Times New Roman 12-point double space, or it's not right, because I have to hold them accountable for that. And so this teaches them that, and it lets me know which ones of them don't know proper format or how to use the computers. Because a lot of it, they know it needs to be double spaced, but they don't know how to do it on the computer. They're still hitting enter at the end of each line. So this is what it is. So the thesis statement, the outline, and the final essay are the only Dropbox assignments they do. Everything else is graded by eLearn. It's all set up as quizzes. That way they can take them multiple times. Multiple questions in the quiz banks. The questions come in different orders. They're never given the answers to the questions. So if they want to know which ones they've missed, they have to ask me and approach me, and we go over it together, and I can tell them which ones they missed and why. Again, because it's that learning opportunity. It's not punitive. And that's the course. That's it in a nutshell. I mean, it was a little difficult at first to figure out what order to put some of the sub skills and subsets in, and how I wanted to break it into units, because I don't want to overwhelm them by having a bunch of assignments over there. And I didn't want any busy work at all in there. I wanted it to all be scaffolded. And that's what took the longest time, was figuring out where everything should go. But once I got that figured out, adding the instructions, because everything is detailed instructions for them. Everything is detailed instructions. Look at all those instructions. Because I'm not standing up there telling them what to do. It's a writing class. which means it should be a reading class too. And they, especially these students, children of the pandemic, they need a lot more practice reading and following instructions. And I tell them, I'm not going to be your enabler. If there is an answer on eLearn that you're asking me a question to, I might tell you, go look it up on eLearn. I know it's there. Okay, and if they can't find it, I will point it out to them. But I'm not just going to tell them. They've got to do the work and find it and be responsible for their own learning. Okay, so that's how I did it. Any questions about how eLearn is set up? Okay, it's pretty simple. And trust me, I am not good with technology. I have a cell phone. I still don't know how to turn it on and off. I'm not good with technology, but the basics with eLearn, the things I was doing for years, like quizzes and posting documents and all of that, it's so easy. And the results are stunning because this is what happened. Let me show you what happened here. I can get to it. Not that one. Where did it go? There it is. Nope, that's not it. Where is my?
See if you can,
There it is.
let's do stop sharing.
It's that one. I want to make sure that one's coming up so they can see what it did. See, I said I wasn't good with technology. Teams and WebEx hates me. Zoom, we have a love-hate relationship, but for the most part, it cooperates. The other two just don't do it. And so this is the data. I compared it to my regular fall 2023 class, and I did it in fall 2024. Both are the first 7 weeks. Okay, they're both the 7 weeks because what we're finding in comp is that we're getting really good students the first 7 weeks and then not so good students the second 7 weeks for a variety of reasons. So I wanted to make sure I was comparing apples to apples. So I had the same type of students, same time period, same number of assignments. The course was exactly the same. The grading criteria was exactly the same, except that this new course, if they finished everything, they had time to go back and revise and redo it. I never had that chance in the lecture 7-week course. And you can see I started off with 2 sections, 40 students, they were both full. For the redesign, it was 60 students, but look at the percentages. This is what amazes me. So I had a retention rate, okay, of 61%. That's students who didn't drop, right? Who kept coming and finished the course. Not necessarily they didn't all pass, but they stayed and completed the course. They didn't stop coming. 86% in this redesigned course because they can't hide. They can't hide. I'm constantly interacting with them. I'm constantly helping them. I'm following up with them to make sure everything's going. If they have any problems, I can stop it before it snowballs. That is what amazed me. I knew I was going to get better grades. And if you look, I had 39% with a C or above. 39%. And that's kind of average for the 10-10 classes, unfortunately. In this class, I had 75%. I knew I was going to have an increase in grades success. I didn't expect it to be that much, but I expected it to go up because they were given the chance to redo it. So the students who are motivated and the ones I can work with, right, because I'm forcing myself on them in class in a non-Title IX way, they know they're there and they can get my help. And they're getting more of it than they ever had before because they get me one-on-one to look at their papers in class. So the students who are working, have family obligations, lots of other classes, who can't see me during other office hours will always have me available in class. And they will always be able to say, Dr. Harrington, can you look at my introduction? Or I'm stuck, I don't know what to write in my conclusion. And then I can help them with that because I'm there. And I brainstorm with them in class. The other thing that's interesting that I think, and I'm not sure if this would fall under retention or under grade success, is when I work with them in class, other students hear me talking to them. So other students who are struggling with thesis statements will be listening in to me telling the student about their thesis statement, and they learn almost as a secondhand way of learning. I always say it's like secondhand smoke. secondhand learning because they're there hearing it. And so that's going to pick up as well. The distribution in A's, not too much. I had a lot more C's because they knew they had to hit the 70 mark. Because in 1010, you have to get a 70 or above to take 1020 and to take any of the literature courses. So you can't just slide by with a D. You have to hit the 70 or above. And so a lot more C's because some of them were like, you know, Dr. Harrington, I'm an engineering major. All I need is a C. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Make sure you get that C. And they did. And they would retake it until they got the C. And then they would stop and they would spend their time on something else. So the grades, I knew I was going to see a bump in. It's the retention that really blew me away. But they're getting that individualized attention. And I'm seeing that again this semester, except this semester I'm running this in 1020, the comp 2, which means theoretically slightly better students because they've been through 1010. But already my retention rate is through the ceiling. My 11 a.m. class, they're all still attending. It's amazing. Every day they're all there. I'm not having absences. And they know to email me now to talk if they're, you know, to say, hey, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to keep working ahead. Is that okay? Like, you betcha. You keep doing that. That's exactly what I want. So what's great about this, let's see if I can go back to my PowerPoint. I got to reshare again, don't I?
You do, yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure.
Hit stop sharing and then
Stop sharing at the top. Okay. And then I go into
share.
share.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
And then window.
Screen? No.
Window.
Window.
And it'll be the CAPSI. Yep.
There we go. Okay. So I showed you the comparison data just to go over a little bit more of the things that I've discovered from the students. So no one misses any lectures. So we have a snow day tomorrow. Doesn't affect my class. My class is told to keep going. I don't have to adjust any due dates. I don't have to change anything. I'm there for them because I can do office hours over Zoom. I can answer emails and they're doing it all on eLearn. They don't need me. I'm a motivation person at this point. I am not the class leader. There are little individualized capsules in the class doing their own work at their own pace and working through it. No one falls behind if I'm absent. If I'm absent, it's the equivalent of missing a week in a 15-week semester. So I don't have to then figure out what else to change or drop later in the semester because they've got everything there. And that's already happened this semester. I had to miss the second day of class due to a family emergency. They didn't miss anything. They got the emails from me saying, just don't come to class, but keep working on it at home. It's manageable units, so it's less daunting. If I just gave them the essay and said, write it, they would freak out. But because I've broken it up into units, they can do each one as many times as they want to make it good. And it's less daunting for them. And they can see success a lot sooner, right? So they're not waiting until they get that final grade for the essay. They can see their progress along the way. I already talked about the one-on-one and the personalized and the redoing assignments. The other one is because I control the class. I can come in like I did today. My 9:30 class, they had an assignment that was due over the weekend. Over half of them didn't do it. And it was important. So I came in that day and I said, I've reopened it. We're working on this one first. So I don't care what you're doing. You're going to go back and you're going to redo that assignment. And you're going to turn it into the Dropbox. And then you can go back working on whatever you wanted to. So everybody who was present this morning at 9:30, which was like 18 out of 20, they all have that done now. So I can control the pace of the class if I want to, just by stepping in and controlling the deadlines and what assignments are opened and what assignments are closed. It builds confidence because they're able to do it on their own. And I didn't realize this, but yeah, we're a leader in technology, but it doesn't mean our students are. Okay. And I've already figured out that I don't know anything about Macs, because I'm a PC girl and trying to get, they're doing pages or whatever and getting it into a Word file where I can grade it in the Dropbox. That's been interesting. So I've had to learn how to do that. And a lot of them don't have reliable computers or internet at home. They were trying to do my comp class before on their cell phones. How do you write an essay on your cell phone? You can't. I mean, I can't even imagine how awful it would be if they tried. Now they've got 2.5 hours every week in front of the computers that they can work on the technology and get it done, because they can listen to the lectures on their cell phones at home. They can take the quizzes on their cell phones at home. They just have to go in through a different place on eLearn. But to actually do the typing and the writing, they're going to do that here where they have access to the technology. Heavy dependence on reading and writing, which for my class is great, which I think all college classes should be reading intensive and writing intensive courses. They have to read the instructions and follow them. And that's still a weak area that we're working on yet, to get them to read my emails, right? And read and follow instructions. So I've got to work on that. That's the next thing to work on. And it maintains the social aspect of writing. So do you remember at the beginning when I was telling you all about the CAPSI courses and the history of Fred Keller? Okay. The Open University of Canada used CAPSI as the basis for all of their distance ed programs. Before it was CAPSI, they used PSI. The Center for CAPSI is based out of the University of Manitoba in Canada. They've really embraced it and it works great, except writing. It does not work well in writing, because writing, when we like to think about it, it is a social act. I know we think it's not because we write individually, but we share our ideas, we learn from each other, we want to share what we've written. Writing is a social act. This class takes care of that aspect because they're not writing in isolation out in the ether world somewhere, they are writing in front of me. So they are forced to have that social interaction with me and their other classmates next to them, because they don't have to talk to me. They can talk to the other classmates as long as they keep it quiet and don't disrupt other people's learning. It becomes a social act. And I think that's also why I'm seeing such high success rates in this course, because I've managed to get rid of the element of CAPSI that always made it difficult before. Even if we think about online courses, right? Why do students fail online courses? Because they don't have that sense of responsibility, that discipline to get on there and do it. And because they're not seeing their instructor face-to-face, they're not being held accountable, and they're not seeing the other students, so they're not being held accountable. My students, the day after they turn in an essay, they have to show up and see me in class. That accountability is built into this workshop model. It forces them to learn time management skills. They have to ask for help from me or their other students. So it forces them to work in collaboration. So we're not doing group work in this class, but they are having group interactions on a day-to-day basis with me and their fellow students. It really is easy to meet disability accommodations in this course, because if the quizzes are untimed, I don't have to give time and a half. And because they're open for them and they can work on them at least a week in advance, I don't have to extend the time past the deadline. They're untimed, they're multiple attempts, they can take them anywhere they want, they fit all those disability accommodations. They don't have to take them in class with me. They can take them over in the care center outside of class. They can just listen to the lectures in class, right? So I don't have to worry about going through my course and changing everything to meet one or two students who have those accommodations. It teaches them to become fluent in technology, especially Word. I'm amazed at the number of students who are trying to use Google Docs to type their essays. And I keep telling them, why are you using Google Docs? It's important that you know how to use Google Docs, but when you get a job and you graduate and get a job, you're going to have to use Word. Because most of the world these days they're still PC users, they're still MS Office users. You need to learn how to use Word. You need to learn it here because they're not getting it anyplace else. And that's been the truth in all English classes for the last 20 years. We teach them the basic word processing skills that they're just not getting anyplace else. It can be easily converted to appear online in case of snow days, or God forbid, another pandemic. If I had this in place when the pandemic hit in spring 2020, we'd have been golden. Instead, I was scrambling to figure out how to put everything online because I was still in that traditional lecture-based format. This is already set up to go. Right, so I don't have to change anything. I just have to be there to pop in and make meetings with them to make sure they're on track and to give them lots of feedback to make sure they're not going off the rails on any of their assignments. And it can be used to prevent course drift. Now, I'm only using this for me right now, but if you had a department where you had a lot of adjuncts or new faculty, or you were concerned that certain faculty were not teaching the requirements that they're supposed to be teaching, if you make this template available to all of them, it will help stop course drift, and it'll give the adjuncts something that they can use, especially if they're brand new adjuncts and have never taught before. Nothing scarier than being a brand new adjunct the very first day. And that's it. It's not perfect. I still have some issues. I still have the students who come in and sit there and do nothing for an entire semester. I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with those students and get them motivated enough to do the work. Luckily, that's the minority. I'm still struggling with getting them to read my emails in a timely manner and keep the emails so they can refer back to them. I'm still struggling with getting them to realize they can go back and review skills. So if they're not sure how to do transitions, that lecture on transitions under writing basics is still there. They can go back and listen to it again and review it again. They just can't take the quiz. That's done. And I've really been struggling this semester with getting them to listen to me when I do the quick little 10-minute mini lectures at the start of class. Basically, it's like today, it was your essay's due on Sunday. Don't forget, here's what I'm grading for. These are the 3 main areas. Make sure you get it into me by Friday at 2 if you want feedback. Otherwise, the deadline is on Sunday. Here's how to do this in-text citation because it's a little bit different from the other ones. And don't forget, check your Dropbox for the feedback because you can't see my attachments or my audio feedback through the grades page, right? Getting them just to focus even on that is really difficult because they want to get started and they want to do the work. And I have to tell them, no, stop, hands off keyboards, hands off cell phones. I need your attention up here and then you can go do it. It's fine. So I'm still having those areas that I need to work on yet because I don't want to hound them. I don't want to be a nag, but I do want to repeat the important information to make sure that they get it because they're not reading their emails, right? So I can't just send out an email saying, remember your essay's due this weekend because they're not reading it. So a lot of time, like I had to teach them this semester how to send proper professional emails. I am not hey. Don't you dare send me an email that says hey, and use proper punctuation in your emails and don't use all caps, right? And tell me what class you're in because eLearn doesn't. So that's it. That's what I've come up with. And I will never go back. If the administration came to me tomorrow and said, you've got to go back to lecturing, I quit because this works for my students in my class. I haven't tried it. This is a skills building class. I haven't tried it in a non-skills building class, like something that's mostly information processing like psych, soc, literature, that sort of thing. I haven't tried it. But all the data on CAPSI shows that it has been working for the last 30 years in subject area courses. I don't see any reason why it couldn't. We just have to change our mindset. Quizzes are not punitive. And students should be allowed to work as much as they want in order to learn the material. And we can do that with eLearn. If we ever get rid of eLearn, again, I quit because I love eLearn. It was terrifying me a couple of years ago when TBR was thinking about going with some other online program. And I'm like, no, you don't understand how good this is. I've taught at places with other online programs and they're not as good as eLearn. For all that it's not perfect and we fuss over it all the time, it's still better than the alternatives that are out there. I can do this on it. I can't do this on the other platforms. Okay. And that's it. Any questions? Yes.
Do you see an increase in, we're talking about skill building.
Yes.
So do you see an increase in students socializing and helping one another in this? I would assume.
They do. They do. Because if I'm just standing up here talking, then they can't talk among themselves. This they do. And they get to ask themselves, well, what are you writing about? Well, I'm writing about this. Well, what's this source? How did you cite it? Where's this paper? Where do I find it? So they're teaching each other, which takes a big workload off me. And so, yeah, they are definitely socializing. And I'm amazed, and it hasn't happened yet this semester, but I expect it to. When I did this course last fall, they figured out how to get to the eLearn class list, and they were emailing each other for help. Just, hey, you know, what did you think of this one? Did anybody find any sources on this? Whatever. And they were sharing information. I didn't even know what was going on until about 2 weeks after it happened, because they leave me off the list, which is okay. Once they forgot and put me on the list. And I'm like, yeah, great. Keep going. I'm not going to say a word. Just don't cheat off each other. And they're not allowed to use AI either. They can't do that. And so far, nobody's cheated on the quizzes yet, but it would be really difficult for them to cheat on the quizzes because I keep changing up the questions, and I have a huge test bank, and it's based on my materials. So they couldn't even really go out to Google and search for answers because they're not going to find my exact wording. So, and it's only the 3 essays themselves were 75% of the overall grade. All the other homework combined is only 25%. So even if they cheated on that 25% and I didn't catch them, it's not enough for them to pass the class. So that's it. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much, my audience. Yay.